Okay, so in this session, we're gonna look at Lab 9, the process, and some of you got started. So we are gonna use Kali Linux. I think most of you are comfortable with accessing the website to download and extract, right? We need 7-zip to extract and VirtualBox to play the VM after we extract. I recommend that you add more RAM and processor to your VM before you start it, because when you're running any kind of security tools, it's always good to have enough resources. The default virtual machine is going to be a little bit more than what the OS require, but you don't want to be very limited when you're running multiple tools or, need RAM for application to load accordingly. Otherwise, it's going to be really slow, right? That's my recommendation. So I have my virtual machine 2026.1. I extracted it using 7-zip, and you can stop me if you have questions. Choose extract files, and I have the extracted folder. I opened up VirtualBox, and I added the virtual machine by locating the extracted folder, right? And add the blue file. Once that you click open, then it's going to add to the playlist. And then once you have it on the playlist, you can make sure you select the virtual machine, click settings. And now in general setting, I'm going to change this to 8,000 megabyte, which is 8 gig of RAM. And make sure that you check your host system, which is the computer I'm using, making sure that it has enough RAM to accommodate what you're changing to. So I have 32 gig on this computer. I'm going to give 8 gig to my virtual machine. And if you run multiple virtual machine, right, think about that. Think about what your local system has, and then to be able to accommodate multiple virtual machines by changing the RAM value. I think some students came back to me, they're new at this, and sometimes they forget to do that and it crashes their computer. So make sure we check that, right? Then on the processor tab, we're gonna make sure we add more processors. So a quad core is good enough for this lab. If you want, you can give it a little more, but I think 4 is adequate. So once you have your configuration, we are going to use NAT by default. So if you have your old virtual machine, make sure you change your network settings to NAT. That way you can connect through your host machine, which is your Windows PC. And then we're going to start. So that was part A. Then once we have our desktop loaded, we're going to log in using the default account. I think some of you saw this in the earlier lab. We didn't get to do much with it before. So I came back with this and I wanted to talk about Zap, which is a very popular tool for web application assessment. Zed Attack Proxy, right? This is open source. It gives you some detailed information. So it's going to be like setting up as an application in between your browser and your web server or your web application server. So everything is going to get passed through it as a proxy, basically. So it's going to inspect everything that is being sent to your web application server. That's how it's able to give you the details on what's vulnerable. So in realistic world, right, in real world practice, we would run this with the IP address of the web application server, the public IP that is used for your web application server. In our lab, we are hosting our web application on our virtual machine as well, right? Like basically we use it for scanning and we use it for hosting at the same time. It's locally hosted, so that's why we're using a loopback address. The 127.0.0.1 is our local machine loopback address. Okay? All right. So I have my VM desktop now. I'm going to go ahead and log in. So Kali Linux is going to load its desktop. And I will always start with an update so that way I can install software. The software that you are going to enable is the DVWA. You've seen this before, right? It is a vulnerable web app that you are going to install onto your system, so that way you can basically run or host a web application that doesn't have a lot of security. This is a code package that is already pre-made, so that way you don't have to build everything from scratch. It's very convenient. So once you install it, you just enable it. So I need to open my terminal to run the command. So I'm going to click the black square at the top. And I'm going to run an update. Input your password if it prompts. That's going to take a minute to come down. Now, the invulnerable web app is used for practice and educational purposes, right? A lot of things are coded in PHP, and we will also use this again next week with the database component, which allows you to look at SQL injection next time, right? So once you update, you are going to install DVWA. You can always check to see if the software exists in Debian Linux using which command. So if it's already there, right, the installation won't continue because it shows you that it's already been installed. So by default, Kali Linux doesn't have DVWA in the current version. So you would just need to install. The reason why is I think the package is pretty big and it has a lot of element. As you look at the libraries that it's unpacked and the code that it's unpacked, you're going to see that it uses PHP, right? So the initial step is to set up a web application server, basically. And through DVWA, you would have all the package and the service that you need to be able to run it. Just like an application. It doesn't have any database component yet, right? You have to add that later. So next week, we're going to add that element. I think in the earlier lab, you probably seen some of that too. So once I have installed it, I simply just use DVWA command, right? -start. And when it turns blue, then that means that my application exists and it recognizes my command. And here it's going to prompt you for your login password. So we're going to type in our password. So now it has started that service, right? And it's going to load your application. Notice that on your URL, it will be your local system loopback address. And then the port that it used, which is 42001. By default, this is the port number, right? And the login, which is, it has the field that we need to enter username and password. We won't really log into here. We'll just need to make sure that it's activated, right? So that way we can test with the scanner. Now, in your job, you are going to assess real web application with public IP address, right? And how the user interface it. So you would use the URL that is used for your web application server hosting. Okay? All right. So I can minimize this or close it. I'm going to install Zed Proxy. And once I have Zed Proxy, I simply just use Zed Proxy command to call up the application. It's going to open up your graphical user interface, your GUI. Know that it's not scaling to the smaller window of your virtual machine. So some part of the buttons might be lower. So you kind of have to maybe expand your window to look, change the size of your your application window to kind of see everything. And it's written in Java. So now I'm going to call Zed Proxy up. And how do I know it's written in Java? It will say that when it runs the application, right? It uses JVM, that is your Java virtual machine that is used to simulate the compile program in Java code. So once you're prompt with this, right, you can select no, I do not want to persist with this at the moment, because you can select yes if you want to persist the session with the name, but right now we're going to select the third option, which is no, and then click start, which allows you to start the app. And what very similar to all the other security tool, it has like these plugins that you can bring in to give the tool some feature, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and expand my VM real quick. You can reduce the size later. And you need to expand the app window to see the button on the bottom. So it tells me on my lab that you can run the updates for all the plugins, except for call home and network. So call home just really means that it's going to come back to your system and your network. So you can, but my advice for you, if you do this in the real world, select the things that would be used for your target system, right? So go through the list and check if you're using fuzzer, select that for the updates. If you want to update everything, you can just select everything, right? But we can go through and we can check the things that we want to update, okay? If you do update all, it'll just grab everything that's on the list and run the updates. There used to be a select all options, but maybe I'm not seeing it, or what was it? Call home, we're gonna leave that, right? So go through and select your updates. So the whole goal is to show you that, these are the things that if you're using them, you can, so the network we don't need, so we can leave that empty. Okay. Then we're going to click update all. And it's going to pull the updates. Some are faster than the others. And then when it's done, it's going to get you to the interface. Now, if you don't have this, for some reason you accidentally close it, it's under tools on the app, right? Okay. So it's saying that not all of them are successfully downloaded and installed. Potentially that not all of them you will not have all the updates at once like that. So some of them will not have updates. So once it's done, we're going to actually close the update window, and then we're going to come back to our application main menu. Okay, so it's completed. I'm going to go ahead and close the update window. So I'm coming back here. We'll just expand it, right? Oh, actually, maybe not. I didn't have it. Right. It's still wrapping up the process for the updates last time that I had selected. Now it's super big. All right. So once your update is completed and you click the close button to close your update window, you are going to come back to the main application like this. It's going to give you a few options. Automated, you can also manually explore certain area of the web application. Like I said, right? Like the application, there's features, and so you can only break it down to subcomponent of your web app. But we want to be able to look at everything that's hosted for the web application. So when you click automated scan, have a good weekend. Thank you. It's going to take you there, and we want to put in the URL that we're going to use. So you can use public IP address for the real server, right? In this case, we're hosting in our own server locally here. So we're going to go ahead and put in the IP address. See you later. And put that here. Okay. Now you can also browse to your server if it is connected as part of your network, which we don't have, right? We are hosting and scanning on the same system. You can also put in the domain name here, like HTTP, right? Example.com, etc. Okay. So now once you put in the URL, right? Let me see if I can tap this. You can tap and press that, or you can just click to attack. It's right under if modern. You can also specify, like, remember how we talked about crawlers earlier, right? You can specify like the type of crawlers that you want, right? Like always use a crawler, or, so in this case, by default, we're going to keep if modern selected. And then you can also put in your user agents, which is your browser. So basically it's going to set up like a middle point between the system, the client system, and the server system. And then it's going to screen all the requests coming through. So we are using all-in-one system. So our system is hosting and our system is accessing. So basically it's going to set up that between for the browser. So we're going to go ahead and click attack. And it's going to process a bunch of requests to your web server application that you had started with DVWA, right? And it's going to give you a list of alerts. Alerts are notification of problems. So if it doesn't come up on the alerts, that means that it cannot find it or it's not a problem, right? We can't assume that it's not a problem if it's not there. So in the case that if it's there and it cannot find it, then you have to manually go look for it. But tools are tools. It's going to give you the majority of the things. Oh, I thought you left. That it finds. So we want to be able to see. And as you look, there's different tabs that you can access on the application, like the spider or the crawler that you use. And then if you have multiple scans, it's going to keep the historical information if you save it, and so on, right? You can perform scans for multiple servers. The goal is to use the tool for different targets, but keep in mind that the application is going to require resources like bandwidth, processor, and RAM. So I typically recommend having multiple virtual machines for multiple targets, not using one virtual machine, one application for multiple target, but it does have the capability to do that, right? So why is that? Because you have limited resources. Let's think about that, right? You need RAM to run your OS. You need RAM to also host stuff or run other application, and you need this to be able to run right now. So when it submit requests like this, right, your processor is working and your RAM is working. So just think about the amount of resources that you have and the things that you are using the resources for. So that's important. You can do it. It's just going to be slowing down everything. And you don't want to slow down everything. So if you have 12 hours to get to where you need to get to, right? Think about like separating the resources and using it for different targets. That's what I'm saying. Yes, you can run multiple virtual machine on your powerful desktop and laptop, right? As long as you have good bandwidth, good RAM, good amount of RAM, and a lot of processor. And a lot of the security jobs, especially for pen testing, you are going to come with your own system. They will not provide you unless you are part of the security operation team, then they will provide you the resources. So some company, they will hire you, but you need to bring your own device. So that's part of the job, right? So this is why I recommend that a student for this program, right, be comfortable with using virtual machine. And if you're looking to buy a computer, invest in a good laptop. And it should be a Windows PC. You can run a MacBook with virtualization, but you likely will have some issues down the line. You can be successful if you maintain and troubleshoot it, but that's why that's just my personal perspective on it. Okay, so wait for the scan to complete. After it's done, you're going to take a screenshot of the result showing me that you did, right? But as you do my lab, don't just like screenshot because I asked you to screenshot. Look at what's presented in front of you and see if there's information. Now, some of you had asked me a question about 25 earlier. Like, you could not find anti-CSRF token. If it doesn't find it, right, it's not part of the alert list. That means that it could not find it or it's not a problem, okay? So if your application doesn't have that element for it to do or to do CSRF, then it's not an issue, right? Think about the web application. If the web application doesn't have things that it cannot use for CSRF, like our damn vulnerable web app, it's just the front end a little bit with like a login, but that login doesn't, it's only to the local of that app. It doesn't, we don't have a database. We don't have a lot of things that it can use. So it might not find things of an issue, right? So, so you might not see something there for this token. In the past, it detected it. So if you watch my last year video, you see that it found it. But they might have also modified their package code for the current DVWA that doesn't have that issue. So we'll see. I'll check right now and I'll tell you. Okay. So the alerts, the flags, right? The color of the flags indicate the level of the problems that you need to address. So it's screening it and it tells you, oh, this application has these, the majority of the issues are here. Okay. So let's expand this a little bit. So once it's done, you're going to get a list of alerts like this. Okay. You're going to take a screenshot. Then on the alert tab, right, you're going to try to look for the things that I asked for. These are some of the major common things that we need to look at. Remember we talked about directory traversal. The app calls it path traversal. That means that it tells you here, right? There's user token in the username. It's able to find like directory that contains that. So that's not a good thing, right? We need to fix that problem, okay? because the DVWA is very vulnerable. The way they created it is like everything it lacks security. So you would see a lot of elements. That's why we use it to kind of give you some practice. Okay. So the alert, it found 16 alert, it's 16 issues that it informs you here, right? You can expand and see each area that it saw, like cookies. It's able to perform some injection. So this tool already did that for you, and it tells you that it's capable of doing it. So that's a problem. And if you select a certain option, right, you can expand it, and then you can look at the level of risk, the confidence, the parameter. So if anything that's the red flag, right, that's high priority. You need to fix those first, and then you go down the list. So in this version, so let's see, anti-click, Jack. So it couldn't find any issue with CSRF, so that's okay. Then so you can say, no, there's no tokens. Actually, anti-CSRF, there's no tokens found, right? So if it doesn't find this, then you don't really have a token. And then you can just put none there for 25. Then we are going to go down to CSP. We talked about content security policy today, right? It really is a way that we can have a little bit of security measure, but it depends on whether you configure it or not. So go to the content security policy and then expand on it, right? So it's not set, right? By default for the web app that we downloaded and installed, it doesn't have any configuration for CSP with the header. So that is a high confidence and it's a medium risk. High confidence just means that it's pretty sure that that's an issue, right? Tools are false positive and negative, false negative. So you can't rely on the tool 100%, but it's going to give you some insight on what to look at or focus in. So the description you can see, right? It says content that browser should be allowed to load that page. Convert types are JavaScript, CSS, HTML frames, font images, embedded objects, Java applets, ActiveX. ActiveX is a big security plugins problem. It has that in video files. Doesn't necessarily that we have video files for the app, but it finds that in general. Yes. But sometimes it doesn't really clear. It's out. So it's still able to bring it back. Just leave that. So the snapshot is for the empty box. Right, it's maybe. Let's see if that works better. Let me know. Thank you. Okay, we were talking about CSP for that step, right? And then look at your result pane. So what I'm showing you here is to, after you scan, right, you should inspect the issues that you're working with, record that because that needs to go to your report that you're gonna provide the whoever hires you or your supervisor about the app, right? And so typically the tools is also going to tell you what kind of attacks can be performed because it found the issues. It's able to, inject script or whatever it is that it, so the tool is designed to also test it. And when we say, not attack it, but test the app, so you can find that information, right? So scroll down on the right, and then it also gives you recommendation. So we need to configure the header. And then it gives you some links to refer to. So for web application, it's always good to refer to OWASP or OWASP. Any question? Okay, so look at your result pane. That's going to give you some information that you need to record for your report. Then we're going to look at cookies or same site issues. So when you're done with that, you can click the arrow and it shrinks it back up. And then you can go down to cookies without same site attributes. And it tells you that cookies has been set without same site attribute. That means that the cookie can be sent for cross-site requests, right? So it is vulnerable to cross-site script. And it knows that by using input, right? So it's saying that the input vector allows it to see that. Okay. So that means that it can also perform cross-site request forgery or cross-site script inclusion or timing attacks. So those are the type of attacks that you would see. So look at the description. It will tell you potential attacks that can happen. So that would help you answer 27. And then let's see if we can find poisoning. So it's not able to see any cookie poisoning, I don't believe, right, for this one. Because I think that on the new DVWA, you can set the security level on it too. So You can expand these to kind of check it out, right? Like authentication requests, some of these. So if you don't see it on there, you can just say that it wasn't discovered. But it doesn't mean, if it doesn't find it, like I said, it doesn't mean that it's not a problem, right? We might want to come back and see if there's ways that they can modify your cookie. So cookie poisoning really means that they can access your cookie and change the content of your cookie. So just said that it's not able to, Zap's not able to discover it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to click on tools and we would check the authentication portion. Remember we talked about like maybe issues with brute force or issues with credential login. So we can come back to this. And on tools, you would see that there's additional options. So authentication tester should be further down on the list. You can click on that. And you want to be able to get it to the login page, right? Because if you just only give it the URL to the port, it will not. That's not going to take you to the feature. So on your web application, there's like each page or each tab that you see that's considered feature on the web application. So this is where it's going to be where the user login. Now, some web developer, they would use the URL and then they can condense it, you know, so when you land on the when you visit the website, it's only to the login page, right? So that's the landing page that you see. But in this web application, there's an extension to the actual URL where you would log in. And typically you would see that extension with the directory where you're going to go. So we can choose the browser, right? It's not change. I have to probably reset my display or change the window size. So you probably have to pull or expand this particular window to get the top if you have the same resolution as I am, which is very large. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in this URL and whatever that is on your web application server, right? You would put in the URL here. If you are connected to it, you can browse to it. Yeah. Okay. And you can set like how you want this, but we're going to do admin and password to give it a start, right? Like to see if that's the default, if it does a match on that. We can look. Okay. And then we can click test. So it's going to automate the process in opening the browser and trying to log in with whatever that you give it there. So it worked, right? And simply just using some default stuff like that. So they typically would guess or use some brute force tool to be able to plug things in and automate or enumerate your accounts. And so username, it passed, password field, it's identified, right? And you can reset and test. So manually, if you're doing it manual, you're going to have to do it one by one, which is very slow, right? There are tools that would directly connect to it and you can have it automated. So take a screenshot that it should be successful. And now if they fish out this information, they'll just plug that in, right? Admin account and whatever the password the admin used. And there you go, right? It's able to access, or they're going to be able to access. So we can close the authentication tester. So on the right side, as it tests your web application, it will tell you a little bit more about your web, right? Like when it did the login, you can see that right here. And you want the login PHP here. You want the login interface here because that login is going to give us the session ID information, right? That's the goal if they do session hijack is that session ID. Okay? So basically set up proxy and be able to grab that, right? So it tells me right here. And when does it expire? So in session hijack session, in that week, we talked about how we need to control the session expiration date a little bit better, right? So this one is set what? Until Friday, which is 24 hours typically, right? And you can minimize this value and change the configuration to where the session would only last maybe 30 minutes, an hour. And if like, remember what I said about how I would come back to my shopping cart and my sessions would still be available like hours later, right? So if you set it for 24 hours, yeah, the user can come back to the shopping cart. But the next day, let's say Saturday or the following day, they would come back to it and it's already been empty, right? It no longer revert back to that session. So we want to be able to control this a little bit more. What if people leave their system unattended? What if they already logged in and they walked away from it, right? What if they are in a session and something comes up and they didn't close the application? Well, that session becomes still active, right? So what you see is this expiration configuration is important. You have to think about the objective of your web application, what you intended to do, how long it should be used for the session, right? And then the maximum age, the domain information that's just, this is hosted locally. So, but typically it will be your public IP and the level of same site, right? HTTP only. So another way, I put a note here that you can find your session ID is through your browser. You can plug in the same URL, which is what we're going to be doing with the browser, right? And we can go into the setting and look at tools and developer and look at the storage tab because that session ID is stored locally to that system. So the way that they can do this without the tool is through the browser, right? So let's open up Firefox. And then we're going to go to the login page, right? And on the right side, we can click on this and go, I think it's under more tools, right? Under more tools, you're going to go to web developer tools. So most browser would have this feature. And what you are going to do is you are going to look at the information here. Sorry, let me come back. So if you are on here, let me see. On the left side, you should see storage tab, right? And there's your session ID. So, you know, the tool is really designed to look at this because it's stored to, you know, so if I'm on your website, right, through the browser, I can also find that information if your web application is vulnerable. That's how I'm able to see. So now let's close this. and come back to our Zap. We're going to go to tools and we're going to do active scan, and then we are going to select our system IP. You can also press Control Alt A for that in this app. So starting point, we're going to go select our system, right? We already did a scan, so it actually sees that there and select. And then you can also give it a context, right? In this one, it is going to check for authentication. So and then we can just do a start scan and it'll just run the scan again. But you can also set, I forgot to mention this. I don't think I mentioned this in the last one. You can set like the policy that you want to use, right? By default, it's default policy. So these are the criteria that it would apply when it's testing your app. So if you are using it for pen testing purposes, right, you can select that and it would be the app configuration for the criteria for pen testing and so on. So there are for development or pen testing, right? There's different criteria, the way that you look at the app. So it has all of the additional option for you to select there. So play with it a little bit more. That's what I encourage you to do so you can have different perspective of the results that it gives you. You can also select the user. So if you scan it again, likely that you're going to have similar results. Sometimes you find a little bit more information if you give it a little bit more configuration in your test. So because the default test at the beginning, when you automate that, it would just run everything, the catch all, right? But you can, my goal is to show you that you can select different options in the tool sets and also add elements to it by configuring it and do the scan, then you might be able to find more information, right? But if your web application only have those things, then that's what it's gonna find. Okay. So I typically recommend running multiple scans to see the variance in your results, right? And compare your results. That's really gonna validate whether your results are close to what you're looking for. So as it does it, you can do the screenshot. And if you want to stop the test, you can click the stop active scan or you can pause it, right? Like let's say I wanted to look at something, you can do that with the interface here. And you can also graph it or show the progress, which it shows the bar here. And then on the left, as it gives you the result, or when it's done, you can expand and see. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna stop this. Yeah. Bye, you too. I'm going to go back to my tool set and I'm going to select the crawler, the Ajax Spider. Ajax Spider is specifically for, right, the Ajax, right, which is, I know that a lot of the web app would include the element. So it's going to use the spider. And then you're just going to give it your starting point, right? Which is our IP address and the port. And like the other one, you can also select the context. If you don't want authentication, if you want everything, then you can just do the scan in that, right? Um, and then we'll just start the scan. So as you go through, there's like different crawler options, and then there's specific crawlers that you can implement into the or add to the tool. So it's going to look for things, and it's going to give you what it has processed here. You can select it to kind of see on the top. So potentially on this app, I have 2 high priority alerts. Those are the red flags. 4 medium alerts, 5 low alerts, and low priority alerts, right? And then 6 is just information purposes. So it would summarize that for you. Um, Now it also color code like some of the process events that it shows here. So you would see red and green. Green means it's successful, red means it's not. And this data, you can also port it out to the file. Okay. So as you run more scan, it's going to add the tabs, and you can also click add and add the tools that you want to do. Okay. Let me see. I probably should configure my display for my virtual machine to look better. But the goal in this lab is to give you like the ways to look at your results and using the tools to be able to obtain information. So the highest level that we see is highest. So if you look at the highest alert tab, it would tell you what kind of alert that is. And then you can also generate that into the report. Now, the way that if you don't see it on the bottom, you can also see that here, right? The red flag ones are the alerts. That is high priority. Too bad that if you click these things, what they should do on the next level is to like be able to select it and then open it up in a separate window. But that is just additional element that would require more RAM. Okay. Uh, then we're gonna go report. We're gonna generate a report so we can put that into a document that we can submit, right? But you need to really clean it up or check, verify that if everything is correct. Okay. It's gonna put it into your home directory by default unless you specify. So if you have a drive or something, you can click the little button here and be able to add it. Okay, and then the name. So it tells us that you can generate the report and it's just the default name that you can use. And you can always go back and look at the report. So and the report is in HTML. So the highest risk, these are the things. It's able to path traverse. We talked about that. It's able to inject. These are the things that you need to fix. Now, don't copy and paste this and call it a day for your job, right? You need to also explain like how to fix these things or why they should fix these things. So go from high to low. And then it also gives you like URL recommendation if you look at the results from what we saw earlier on the pane, the reference, right? So here, the reference. So go to the reference and then document some information on how to troubleshoot or how to close the security gap. So there's guidelines for you to go to, right? Like you don't have to come up with it. You can refer, and of course you can use internet resources, AI resources as well. Okay, we can also sort these things. So alerts counts by risk confidence. And confidence level is right here, right? So we can click this link and it's going to take you to that section. Now, as an analyst, you have to do the interpretation of this, right? You can't just say, oh, this has zero high confidence user confirm. Like people in business and the decision maker, they won't know what that is. So you have to break it down for them. What does this mean? Like for money, right? For changes in the infrastructure and so on. So this gives you the percentage as well, but you can go to the summary section. It tells you that. So the total for the total risk for the high risk, right? That will be two. There's two high priority risk, and that is 11.8%. Where the majority lies in information, and the next the next is mostly like low or medium risk, which is generally okay. I mean, we can probably address the two issues that it found here quickly. And then, so work from your high down, right? So here we go. You have 2 high, 4 medium, and 5 low. 6 information. And then it breaks it down to each area. So you can look at the report and be able to answer these questions. We already started DVWA. You can always restart it. If you need to stop, right, you can do DVWA-stop, and that will terminate the app service. So I'm going to go ahead and this has already been started, so I'm not going to run that command again. So when you're done with Zap, you can close it so that way it can release the resources. I have about 16 minutes, so let's get through. Now, if you don't get through D, I'm okay with that, or even E, but I encourage you to practice using these. So I'm going to do SQLmap and maybe beef a little bit so you can see cross-site. Okay. So we already started DVWA. Have a good weekend. Did that work when you restarted?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. We're going to do the wizard to see the options for the app itself, right? So this is console based. It doesn't have a graphical user interface like the other app. You need to put in the URL. So you would start with the URL that. So we are going to bring it back to the login page that we examined with Zap earlier. And then for the post data, we're just going to press enter for none. And what we want is we want to inject at different level, right? You can do normal, you can do difficulty is medium. So we're going to use medium. You can start hard and then go down, whatever, that's up to you. But I'm going to start with number 2 and press enter. Bye. Have a good weekend. And then for enumeration, we're going to test that too. So that will be the basic, or you want intermediate, right? So we're going to do, or everything, right? So it depends on the level. So if you want to try with intermediate first, or if you're not sure, you can do all. So 3. Depends on you want to test the configuration of that particular web application, whether it's injectable or not, right? So wait to see, and if you see anything that in the outcome, you can screenshot, right? And it tells you there's 2 critical area. It shows that it request is refused, unable to connect. Maybe I need to start my DVWA. Sorry. I thought I did start the service earlier, but oh, yeah. Okay. What's up? Yeah, there's nothing. Bye. It did not find. Take care. Yeah, I didn't have that either. So on the new DVWA, if you look at my last year video, right, and every year they change it. So yeah, so you don't see 25, which is CSRF, or cookie poisoning, but it was there before the way that they made it, but now they made it with a little bit better configuration, so that's why you don't see it. But it doesn't mean that it exists, or that could be that the element of cookies is not there anymore, you know. There's cookie, same site cookie that's missing. So, you know, it depends on how they coded the application also. Yeah. All right. Let's try that again. So we're going to use the logging. Do level 2, and then we can do 3, right? Bye. So it says connection refused. Let me see if I can run. the wizard, but instead of the login, I'm just going to use the port. But I don't think it's going to work.
Have a good one.
Bye, you too. Yeah, so we're going to get the same result. There's refused connection. So it's not able to execute the tool. No injectable. It can't inject additional script to it, so no. Okay. Beef is specifically made for browser exploitation. I'm going to do a quick update. And then I will stop the service for my web app. And then I'm going to install Beef. And please read what the description for Beef. You can also go to their website to learn more. So it tells you that it gives you, let me see. It hooked the browser like IP address and browser type, right? Basically, frameworks means that it comes with many tools to be able to execute different things for browser vulnerability assessment. All right. So once I install, I'm going to open. Let me see, because we're trying to run so many services on it to see if it works. Using default credential, password must be different than Beef. Please type in the username and password. So we're going to do Kali. Okay. So if you type Beef as a user and Kali as the password, which you generate that earlier, right? This is the interface for Beef. Now, you can select the option with the type of browser that you want, whether you are connected or not connected, right? Offline or online. In the description of the application before the exercise, it talks about like a zombie option. You can also run auto run, logs that would be recorded so you can view the logs to see more on like the details of the execution. So on the left side, we can look at the hook browser. So let's say I'm doing an online hook browser, right? And if you go down, it talks about that here. So I didn't, so you can go to the shortcut that it provides for HookMe. So this gives you additional options on how to be able to set up the additional component for your hook browser. So if you want to test the browser, right, have the browser, the whatever user browser, go to this page. Do you get what I mean? And so let's say I'm using Chrome on my phone, right? You tell them, oh, go to this link, right? And then at that time, then we would be able to use this tool to assess that browser. Okay. So if you copy this and open up your Firefox and or your virtual machine, for example, right? It will go there. It's the same thing as what you would see. So that's the source URL that you would use. And you don't have to use like their landing page like this. You can you can configure it to where it's like an actual company that looks like the real deal, right? But you host it on port 3000. I don't think I added this element in the last video, but this is how Beef is used, is to test the actual browser itself, whether it's injectable to your URL right here. Okay? Have a good weekend. What do we put on for the URL? Yeah, so you can use the demo. This is the basic to the test, but you should customize this. That's what I'm saying. Because it talks about that. So once you log in, right? Oh, I did close it. It shows you that it runs the hook. But yeah, once you open it, it tells you so let's say I log in as Beef. Kali, right? You too, thank you. Yeah, sometimes you have to get out of the app and re-log back in. It actually tells you like the IP address and the URL. Like the first time it might not record it, but so what I did was for the online browser, when you show that page, if you open the browser and you visit their demo link that they have, it's going to record that browser. So you see it. Yeah, it should be like whichever the web host that you would have, that's the URL. And it tells you the type of browser. Let me see if I have any logs on it. Yeah, it shows you. Yeah, we don't have any proxy set up. So this tool, because it's a set of tools, sometimes you're gonna have to dissect it a little bit and play with it more. But I think they have some demo for you to view as well. Okay. I have 3 minutes, so I'm gonna record part E, but I won't require it. So if you don't do part E, that's okay. Yeah. But I'm gonna record it so that way in case the students that did it, they wanted to verify. So I'm going to close this. And I'm gonna restart my DVWA. And once I have my web app started, I'm going to run Wapiti. Wapiti is a tool that's already built in with Kali Linux. It's already installed in Kali Linux. So once I have my web app running, I'm going to minimize that, come back to my terminal. And you can always say which Wapiti. Oh, an I. And if it shows the path, that means your app is installed. So we're going to do Wapiti -H. Oh, no space, right? I think. With an I. Space that H. So this help options tells you all the additional switch or options that you can add, like the dash. And so we are going to use a dash v2, and we want to put in the URL of our web app. And V is just for robos. So if you end at the beef section, that's okay. Right? Yeah, but make sure we answer 70.
I'm probably going to the part.
That's fine. Okay, so I ran the scan with Wapiti, and it gives me the report, and the file is in the home directory of the user account, and it shows generated report under the Wapiti folder. So I can find that here. You can also click the home. Under generated reports, right, and the timestamp. So we can copy this link or this path. We can put it into this right here, right? Or you can navigate to it. So I'm going to open the browser. It's probably easier to navigate to that. Oh, it says file not found. Let's go to here. There you go. Yeah, it might not open up the entire thing if you copy the link, but you can go to the folder and then find the file, which is what I did. So I got the report from here, right? I copied this. And then I didn't copy the whole thing. Copy selection, and then I open Firefox inside my VM, and I go there. And it loads the report. So it tells me that there's clear text password, there's some CSP problem like what you've seen with Zap. Also, a lot of things that's similar with Zap. So this is a good tool to run in parallel with Zap so you can see. And that's part of part E. So the vulnerabilities are listed here with the value and the link that it provides for you to reference. Like secure flag cookies. So some stuff it finds that it's not in Zap, and some stuff that it matches with Zap result. So we learned how to assess web application today using Zed Attack Proxy, along with looking at browser hooking for B. Briefly, right? It doesn't really have a lot of extension because it's a framework, so you can also explore further. We also use SQLmap to see if there's injectable point for SQL. And if you did part E, then we covered Wapiti, which in comparison to Zap, it should have similar or the same result. I'm gonna stop.